Have you ever wondered how a single act of kindness can change a life forever? This is the story of Quang, a man abandoned and beaten, left to the mercy of fate, who was rescued by a compassionate woman named Huong. Months later, when Quang and his partner Linda faced overwhelming struggles and financial despair, Huong returned, offering a lifeline. 1 billion Vietnamese dong, with no repayment pressure, no deadlines, just faith in their future. Watch how this generosity restores hope, transforms despair into opportunity, and proves that true kindness can change everything. Don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories.
Quang could still remember that fateful day, etched into his memory like a scar that would never fade. It had been a rainy afternoon, the kind where the sky seems to weigh down on everything beneath it, and the streets glisten with a slippery sheen from the constant drizzle. He had been walking home, exhausted from a long day of trying to make ends meet, when a sudden ambush changed everything. A group of men had appeared from the shadows, rough and merciless, taking his wallet, his phone, and every last bit of hope he had carried with him. The blow to his head was the last thing he remembered before darkness swallowed him whole. When he awoke, it was to the harsh smell of wet asphalt and the chilling emptiness of being abandoned on the roadside. His body ached, bruised and bleeding, and his mind swam in a haze of despair. He felt utterly alone, as if the world had decided to turn its back on him in one cruel, merciless moment. But then, as if fate had decided he was not yet done with him, she appeared. Huong, a woman whose presence radiated warmth and quiet strength, as if the storm itself had been softened by her mere existence. She found him sprawled by the roadside, half conscious and shivering, and without hesitation, lifted him from the ground, carrying him as though he were fragile glass. Her hands were gentle but steady, providing a strange reassurance that somehow, in this chaotic and unforgiving world, there were still people who cared. She brought him to her home, a modest apartment that smelled faintly of herbs and home-cooked meals, and tended to him with meticulous care. Every bruise was cleaned, every cut dressed, and every weak breath he drew was met with soft words of encouragement. During those weeks of recovery, Quang watched Hoon move through her life with quiet dignity. She worked tirelessly, yet she always made time to sit by his side, sharing stories, laughter, and even her own worries. There was no patronizing tone in her voice, no trace of pity, only genuine concern and a steady, unwavering kindness that made him feel human again. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she became more than just a savior. She became a presence that reminded him of hope, that life could still hold beauty even after the darkest of nights. Huong found himself opening up, sharing dreams he had buried under layers of fear and disappointment, speaking of ambitions he had almost given up on. And in return, Huong offered wisdom, comfort, and a patient listening ear, never judging, never rushing, just being there. It was during this time, amidst the quiet routines and the shared silences, that Huong began to understand the depth of what she had given him. Not just her care, but a second chance. Each meal she prepared, each night she stayed by his side when he slept fitfully. Each gentle smile that met his tired eyes was a lifeline. He realized that Huong had seen him not as a victim of circumstance, not as someone to be pitied, but as a person worthy of dignity, worthy of care, worthy of being believed in. Her compassion was a rare, unspoken gift, one that transcended words or repayment. And for the first time in months, Huong allowed himself to feel that perhaps he could survive, perhaps he could rise again. As the weeks turned into months, his strength returned, but so did the awareness of the debt of gratitude he owed her. Not the kind of debt measured in money or favors, but one of heart, of acknowledgement, of carrying forward the kindness that had been shown to him when he was at his lowest. Every time he looked at her, Huong was reminded of the fragility of life, the unpredictability of fortune, and the profound impact one selfless act could have on a life teetering on the edge of despair. Huong had not just saved him from the street that day, she had saved him from hopelessness itself, rekindling a spark that he feared had died forever.
Months had passed since Quang's miraculous recovery, yet life had not been entirely kind. Though he had regained his strength and will, the world outside was as unforgiving as ever. His small savings had been spent, opportunities had slipped through his fingers, and debts were piling up with each passing day. Linda, ever supportive yet equally anxious, tried to keep his spirits up. But even her bright smile could not completely mask the fear that gnawed at both of them. They had done everything they could, working long hours, selling what little they had, but the obstacles seemed insurmountable. Hope was a fragile thread, fraying with every disappointment. Then, like a sudden ray of sunlight breaking through a stormy sky, Huong appeared again. She had called unexpectedly, her voice calm and warm, and with it came an unspoken understanding of all that had transpired since she last saw him. Quang's heart pounded with a mix of surprise, gratitude, and something he could hardly name. Huong had returned, not by coincidence, but by choice, aware of the struggles he was facing and ready to extend her hand once more. Her presence carried a quiet authority, a certainty that made him feel safe even before she spoke a word. She did not hesitate or offer half measures. Sitting across from them at the modest table that had borne witness to so many of their shared anxieties, Huong spoke softly but decisively. She would lend Quang a substantial sum of money, 1 billion Vietnamese dong, to give him the chance to rebuild. Her words were not heavy with conditions or expectations. There was no mention of interest, no strict repayment schedule, no looming pressure to return what she had entrusted. "Take it," she said gently, her eyes meeting his with unwavering calm. "Use it to start over, to find your footing. When you can, when you are ready, then repay me. Until then, just live." For Quang and Linda, the moment was surreal. A mixture of relief, disbelief, and overwhelming gratitude washed over them like a tidal wave. Their struggles, once suffocating and seemingly endless, suddenly felt manageable, even surmountable. Linda's hands trembled as she clutched Quang's, tears brimming in her eyes, while Quang himself felt a lump rise in his throat, unable to articulate the torrent of emotions swelling inside him. It was not just the money that mattered. It was the faith, the trust, the sheer act of kindness that allowed them to breathe again after months of desperation. As the reality settled in, Quang's mind raced with possibilities. The money was enough to pay off debts, to stabilize their lives, and to take the first steps toward a new beginning. He envisioned small businesses, opportunities long postponed, and the chance to create a life he had only dreamed of in fleeting moments of hope. And yet, beyond the practicalities, he felt an almost spiritual debt to Huong, a profound acknowledgement that her generosity was not measured by currency alone, but by her willingness to believe in him when he had almost given up on himself. Linda, sensing the weight of the moment, whispered a heartfelt thank you that seemed far too small for the enormity of the gift they had been given. Quang, usually reserved and careful with his words, found himself overcome with emotion. He could only nod, the simple gesture carrying a depth that words could never fully capture. In that quiet, unassuming room, the three of them shared a moment of unspoken understanding that life, with all its cruelty and unpredictability, could still be tempered by compassion, generosity, and faith in one another. Huong's act had done more than provide financial relief. It had reignited hope, a light in the darkness, and a reminder that even in the most desperate circumstances, kindness could arrive when least expected. For Quang and Linda, it was a lifeline, a chance to reclaim control over their lives
and a powerful affirmation that sometimes the universe sent angels in human form, quietly steering them toward a second chance. And in that moment, amidst cheers and whispered promises, they realized that their journey was no longer of mere survival, but of possibility, courage, and the promise of new beginnings. If you've ever wondered how a single act of kindness can change someone's life forever, let this story show you the power of compassion and how hope can emerge even in the darkest moments. Quang and Linda had been trapped in a cycle of despair for months, feeling the weight of their struggles pressing down on them from every direction. But now, thanks to Huong's extraordinary generosity, a door that had long been closed suddenly swung wide open. The enormity of what had just happened left them almost speechless, hearts pounding with relief and gratitude. As Quang counted the sum in disbelief, his hands trembling slightly, he felt a surge of emotions that words could not capture. 1 billion Vietnamese dong, enough to pay off pressing debts, stabilize their fragile lives, and plant the seeds of a new beginning. But more than the money itself, it was the trust and faith behind Huong's gesture that struck him most deeply. She had offered not a loan with strict deadlines or interest, but a lifeline, a chance to breathe again without the suffocating pressure of repayment looming over their heads. "There's no rush," she had said. "Live first. Build your future. The rest will come when it's ready." Those words, simple yet profound, echoed in Quang's mind, filling him with a mixture of awe and humility. Linda could barely contain her emotions. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she embraced Quang tightly, whispering, "We finally have a chance, thanks to her." Their shared despair, once a crushing weight, now transformed into cautious optimism. Every worry that had kept them awake at night, the debts, the unpaid bills, the uncertainty of their future, suddenly felt manageable. It was as if Huong's act of kindness had not only given them money, but had lifted a tremendous burden from their hearts. The hopelessness that had once seemed inescapable was replaced with a renewed sense of purpose. Quang's mind raced with possibilities. He imagined clearing his debts, creating a stable home for Linda, and pursuing dreams that had been set aside for far too long. For months, he had been surviving, but now he could begin to truly live, to take deliberate steps toward the life he had always envisioned but had thought impossible. Yet amidst all the plans and calculations, he knew the most important thing was gratitude. Huong had reminded him that generosity, faith, and compassion were far more powerful than money alone. Her belief in him, her willingness to intervene without asking for anything in return, was a lesson he would carry for the rest of his life. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the modest apartment, Quang and Linda sat together, hearts full, minds buzzing with hope and determination. They talked quietly, planning small steps, setting priorities, and dreaming of the future. And throughout it all, they felt the profound presence of Huong, not just as a benefactor, but as a symbol of the kindness that exists in the world, even when life seems relentlessly cruel. Quang realized that true wealth was not measured merely in currency, but in trust, compassion, and the willingness to help another person rise when they are down. In that quiet moment of reflection, they knew one thing for certain. This was a turning point. With Huong's help, they could face the challenges ahead with courage and hope, knowing that they were not alone. They promised themselves that one day, they would pay forward the generosity they had received, helping others find light in their own darkness. And as they looked at each other, hands clasped, eyes glistening, they understood that life had given them a gift far greater than money, a renewed belief in the goodness of people and the power of hope to transform despair into opportunity. If this story touched your heart, Don't forget to subscribe and follow our channel for more inspiring stories of kindness, courage, and the miracles that happen when we least expect them. Because sometimes a single act of generosity is all it takes to change a life forever, and maybe even yours.
Hello, xin chào tất cả các khán giả của kênh Lý Tử Ninja Review. Vậy là tập phim của ngày hôm nay trên kênh Lý Tử Ninja Review đã kết thúc tại đây. Trong tập phim ngày hôm nay thì ân nhân là Hương đã từng cứu mạng Quang trong vụ cướp đã xuất hiện và hỗ trợ anh và Linda với số tiền là 1 tỷ đồng để cho anh và Linda có thể xây dựng lại sự nghiệp của mình. Quang và Linda thì rất là cảm động tấm lòng của Hương và cả hai người đều hứa sẽ cố gắng hoàn lại số tiền này cho Hương một cách sớm nhất, nhưng Hương không yêu cầu hai người hoàn lại số tiền này bởi vì cô giúp mà không yêu cầu là họ phải trả ơn hay trả lại tiền. Liệu rằng Quang và Nina có thành công với số tiền này của Hương hay không, hay là còn có khó khăn nào sẽ xuất hiện về phía sau này. Tất cả sẽ được hé lộ vào các tập tiếp theo. Các bạn hãy bấm vào nút đăng ký kênh để nhận được thông báo mới nhất về các tập phim sẽ được phát sóng hàng ngày trên kênh Lý Tử Tina Review nhé. Và đặc biệt đừng quên để lại bình luận ở dưới video và nhấn nút like, chia sẻ video. Cảm ơn các bạn rất nhiều. Bye bye!